Hi, I'm Tony Gittens, director of the Washington, DC International Film Festival. We are very proud to have the world premiere of a new film from a Washington filmmaker. And that film is A Tale of Three Chinatowns. We have with us the director of the film, Lisa Mao, and the producer of the film, Penny Lee. They'll be in conversation with Melissa Houghton, and Melissa is the executive director of Women in Film and Video. I hope you'll enjoy this insightful interview.
Hello, I'm Melissa Houghton, the Executive Director of Women in Film and Video, and I want to say a special thank you to Filmfest DC for programming A Tale of Three Chinatowns, produced by Tiger Sisters Productions, and I'm thrilled to be joined by the filmmakers Penny Lee and Lisa Mao. I hope that you all have time to watch the film. You're going to enjoy every moment of it. But Penny, I'd like you to introduce yourself to our audience and let them know what you've been up to.
Well, I'd like to first thank Filmfest DC for accepting A Tale of Three Chinatowns and allowing us to share our film. My role is the producer and editor. What I do in my professional career is I'm an independent freelance editor. So I edit documentaries, shorts, reality TV series, promotional videos, and some government agency projects. Some of my editing projects clients include National Geographic, Discovery Channel, Travel Channel, and others. And I also work on other filmmakers' projects as editor. In addition, currently on the volunteer side, I serve as the public relations officer for the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, and I'm also the secretary of the Chinese Youth Club of Washington, D.C. I am married and I have 2 grown children, and I live in Silver Spring, Maryland. My passion for filmmaking is to highlight the immigrant experience for Chinese Americans in my community. And so here I am today doing it.
Thank you. And Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start talking about the film.
Thanks, Melissa. So my name is Lisa Mao. I'm the director, writer, and producer of A Tale of Three Chinatowns. I've been in film and television for all of my career, starting out at Discovery Channel and then working for independent production companies, developing shows for National Geographic Channel, History Channel, HGTV, Discovery Channel, and other cable networks. This film has been a joy to make with Penny as the writer, director, and producer of this film. And in my day job, I still work in cable television, currently working for National Geographic Channel, developing shows in the nature space.
Thank you. So I want to let everybody know, in case you haven't seen the film, Tale of Three Chinatowns chronicles some of what's going on in the Washington, D.C. Chinatown, Boston, Massachusetts, and Chicago, Illinois. So Penny, what kind of got you out from behind the editor's console to make this film?
Well, after over 25 years of editing, I decided I wanted to do something different. My personal connection to Chinatown, to the DC Chinatown, was and is that my husband's family is from Washington, D.C. So I've grown to know many people who grew up in Chinatown. And when they moved away, I felt so much is lost of their stories. And so I wanted to help preserve some of these stories about what this Chinatown was and is, and without preserving the stories, I feel that there's a big loss. And so that compelled me to make this film about Chinatown.
And Lisa, kind of the same question for you. You're working in very different places in your day job. So what brought you to this film, and why these 3 cities?
So thank you, Melissa, for your question. So Penny and I had actually worked on another film together called Through Chinatown's Eyes, April 1968, which looked at Washington, D.C.'s Chinatown during and after the riots of '68, following Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. From doing that film, we had a lot of follow-up questions whenever we would screen the film, and it seemed like the next film after that film would be about the current state of DC's Chinatown. As Penny and I just started to think about the film, the second film, it really felt like, we can't really look at this particular Chinatown in a vacuum. Let's take a look at 2 or more other Chinatowns. We could have done a larger film, but even 3 was a lot. And, in many ways, we feel like this film could be 3 individual films. We chose the 3 specific Chinatowns, these 3 cities, primarily to just look at the different experiences of what those Chinatowns are going through. DC's really is in some ways what's called a dead Chinatown, as in very few residents, of Asian descent still live there. And then Chicago's Chinatown was quite the opposite. It was actually a Chinatown that had grown and expanded over the last 100 years. And then for the third Chinatown, we really wanted to look at a Chinatown that was kind of in the throes of gentrification and activism, where they were kind of like holding on for dear life, which there are several. And we ended up going with Boston because just the forces that are there, it's developmental, it's also institutional development. There are many aspects that are at play within Boston's Chinatown. So that's how we chose those 3 cities.
Yeah, and the diversity among the stories is so interesting. And it gave me, as someone who's familiar with 2 of them, just a different way of looking at them. But Penny, what was it like, since for a change you were on set and actually helping direct the sets too? What was it like to be on site filming, and how did that actually ultimately affect your editing of the film?
Well, as an editor, it's always a joy to be on set, kind of watching what's been shot, knowing what footage we have to work with, using it later, knowing what's missing, and what, kind of like visually shaping what might be coming up in post. So it's very helpful as an editor to be on hand or on set during production. With our film, I'm grateful that I'm able to do that with Lisa and through her direction. And, sometimes we need to go pick up footage or pick up B-roll that was not included when we were there. And, in terms of managing the production, the people in each city, I was most fortunate to be able to get the networks of the people that we selected through my relationship with CCBA, which is the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, and the Chinese Youth Club of Washington, DC. And I'll explain just shortly a little bit, is there's CCBAs throughout Chinatowns in all across the United States. Chinatown, there's one in New York, there's one in San Francisco. So through that connection in Boston, we were able to use their location to shoot some of our interviews. And also grateful that they didn't charge us for that. And then through that led us to other people in Boston who I know because of the Chinese Youth Club. The Chinese Youth Club has a sports program. They have a volleyball and basketball program, which they bring teams to different cities across the nation, the bigger Chinatowns, to have tournaments, sports tournaments. And through these tournaments, which my husband and my children play with these teams, we connect with people from those cities. So friends of mine in Boston who lived in Chinatown, Boston, grew up in Chinatown, Boston. Through that network, we were able to find people to be our subjects. So that was very helpful. And in connecting all these different people in Chicago and Boston, we were fortunate enough to, I think we shot over 40 interviews in total, including.
Wow. And Lisa, I know that you and Penny were usually both in each city together, but you handled Chicago on your own. So how is that after being in a team, then going solo into Chicago? Kind of what challenges and joys did you have there?
So in my day job, I field produce and direct. So for me, it wasn't a stretch, it was sort of like, this is what I do. So it was totally fine. Setting up the shoot, it was a pretty intense shoot because we were trying to film a lot in like 3-4 days. It was winter in Chicago, which if anyone knows winter in Chicago, not only is it cold, but you just don't know what the winter has in store for you. So one of the shoots, which was outdoors, which was the parade, the Chinese New Year parade, you'll see in the footage that in the beginning there's no snow, but then by the end there's like a blizzard, which again is pretty normal for Chicago. So we just had to kind of roll with the punches. So in terms of going out there alone, it was fine. There just was a lot of heavy lifting. There was a lot, we had a PA who canceled at the last minute, had to scramble. Luckily, I have production friends in Chicago, so they hooked me up with another PA, which was, just so fortunate. And then one of the subjects that we interviewed, he was fantastic. He was not only was he like a local fixer, but he was also just told his story, and really, I mean, Spencer, shout out to Spencer. He really helped a lot with that Chicago shoot in terms of like connecting us with people, connecting me with people. As Penny mentioned earlier, some of the subject matters helped us get locations. There were some location fees that were paid, totally fine. But, at the end of the day, people also want to be helpful. They want their stories to be told. And, they realize that in order to do that, it literally takes a village.
So you did a shout out to Spencer, and I know there's some other people that you wanted to really thank for being engaged with the films. Why don't we give them a shout out now?
There's so many. I mean, honestly, they're just everyone who participated in the film, we thank completely. But I mean, I'd say for Chicago, there was definitely Spencer Ang, also Gene Lee, who was huge. He, had suggestions of places and also people to talk to. And also David Wu, who was the director of the Pui Tak Center, which is also where we filmed, and just a huge community center that supports Chinatown in Chicago. That's who I can think of for Chicago. And Penny, for DC and Boston, what do you think?
For Boston, I'd like to thank Ken Luke, who connected us with Andrew Leong, who was in our film as well. Andrew is associate producer for University of Mass, and which also, I think, connected us with Karen Chen, who is the executive director of CPA, Chinese Progressive Association. And then some of my other Chinatown friends connected us to Richard Chen, who is a former resident. Cynthia Yi was a former resident. So these former residents, kind of like know people who know people, that kind of like, oh, will they be willing to share their stories? And they said yes.
Yeah, people really want to share their stories. And I would say to Penny's point about the connections, in production in general, I mean, this is what I've experienced over my career, is that, if not this person, then who might they suggest? Always using, your resources. Always ask, you can't do it. Is there someone else that you think we should speak with? I'm really looking for this person. And then, offering it up, and seeing what comes to you.
And who helped you get the amazing footage? It's just between the aerial shots and the on the street shots. It's just a beautiful, beautiful film. Who helped capture that?
So one person and his wife who we really thank is Steve Coughlin and Ann Coughlin. And I know, Melissa, we'll probably get into this later. Penny and I have full-time jobs. And we took about 2.5 to 3 years to make this film. It was primarily self-funded, and also with favors from people. Steve is a DP, and Anne, his wife, is an audio mixer as well as like makeup artist, and key grip. I mean, Anne is amazing and does so many things as well. And they, when we were looking for a DP, they came on board to partner with us, and we were really appreciative of them. They traveled through blizzard conditions in their spare time in their big, honking suburban SUV, and put in long hours, and were perfectionists, and we really thank them enormously. Also to a post facility that gave us a deal, the composer. I mean, so many people really helped us out with this.
Yeah, and I love some of the footage you got, because you get to focus in on, that individual place or person you were talking to, but then you also had the chance to see the neighborhood kind of in situ and see what those other pressures were. And I really appreciated that in terms of really being able to position what you were talking about in the film. And we will get back to production and challenges in a second. But Lisa, you had a huge job as the writer of the film as well, kind of juxtaposing a lot of history and a lot of contemporary conditions. Kind of what was your guide through that? How did you figure out that balance?
So interestingly, I actually have a master's in history. So, and I write. I write for a living. So for me, I feel like that history, master's, research, writing, it really has helped me throughout my career. And with this project, especially, in the early edits of the film, we did share it with a handful of people, and people gave us feedback. They were like, listen, history piece is too long, and this, that's not really what this film is about. The film is about the experiences of the current and former residents and the evolution of Chinatowns over time. So we did try to condense it. And I would say that, honestly, I feel like my development experience, like my experience as a development exec, where it's all about the log line and all about the elevator pitch, I really had to use those skills and squeeze in what I could, what was relevant to, the launching of the story, the story of the film.
And Penny, kind of the same question for you. The editor, in many ways, also functions as a writer as it goes through. How did your experience kind of feed into the way you were editing it and how you were combining everything to make it work as a final beautiful project?
Well, I have to be grateful and thankful for Lisa and her work in shaping the stories. I think my job as an editor is more visualizing what it looks like based on the writing that she have done and giving me something to work with. And so depending on the story and the way it's flowing, I look for the coverage. And so my job is to look for the coverage based on what we shot. We have shot, then we go back and do pickups or archival footage, which we have to find, which we did, and locate to be included into the story, into the film. So I'm just kind of helping shape visually what it should look like. And I also like to put a shout out to Interface Multimedia in Bethesda, Maryland, because they have a big part in doing the maps and the animation for us. So I want to thank them for their contribution to our film with their work as well.
So I know you all started thinking about the film and pulling it together in 2018, and a lot of filming in 2019, and then 2020 happened. So let's just get the elephant out of the room. How did you use that pandemic period? What were the flukes it caused, or maybe what were some of the benefits you had from it? And Lisa, since that would have been kind of post, I'll someone to you.
Sure. So Penny and I both have day jobs, and I used to travel quite a bit for my job. So when everything shut down, it really freed up time for me, nights and weekends where I could actually devote my time to writing this film and actually working with Penny. I mean, Penny, as a producer, as an executive producer, she was like, "Where's the script?" I was like, "Okay, all right." And Penny was great. She was like, "Hey, why don't you come on over? Well, I'll make dinner. I'll have dinner for you." She lured me with food and got me out of my house, which is full of distractions. And so that was like the best like production move she could have made as an EP is to just kind of right the ship with the writer, and so that was like super pre-pandemic, but then kind of bled into the early part of the pandemic, and again, like it just freed up my time because I wasn't traveling as much, so I could really dedicate my time to doing this. And then we got into a workflow working virtually, which was great. I will say, because of the pandemic and because of all that happened to various Chinatowns around the world, we really thought long and hard about what are we going to do now? And so we did put something in the film to address it. But, at the end of the day, the story of this film, the story that we were telling, is really about Chinatowns and their evolution in more modern history, and up to today. And, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but, the question I know that will come from this film for many people is, well, is what's going to happen now? You guys filmed this right before the pandemic, which in many ways is a nice time capsule of what Chinatown was like just before the world changed, right? And, to be seen what will happen.
And that leads me into almost my final question, which is, Penny, what do you want people to take away after they see the film? What do you want them thinking about or doing?
I hope this film will help educate viewers about why Chinatown exists and why it's important to the Chinese people. Real people live and work in Chinatowns all across the nation, and it's a place that represents us. And I'm very concerned with all the anti-hate going on around these days. So I think it's important for people to understand that many Chinese people love this country and we love the city where we live, and that we're all Americans and we belong in America. And so that's what I hope.
What I found so interesting was I think of how often I engage in those Chinatowns, and it gave me a very different way to do it and think about it. So I was actually, since seeing the film, and I encourage everyone to do that, it's given me a very different way to engage with those Chinatowns rather than, dropping in for an experience. I'm actually looking at them differently, and I love that about it. It wasn't something I was expecting to begin with. So I want to thank you both so much for that you gave it such a engaging way to be into it. So what are your next steps for the film? We're thrilled that it's at Filmfest DC. Kind of what are next steps, festival runs, and then ...
Yeah, so please check out our website, 3chinatowns.com, and we will have listings of screenings coming up. In addition to Filmfest DC, the film also recently was accepted to the Roxbury International Film Festival, which will be at the end of June. So definitely check that out as well. And we're waiting to hear back from other film festivals. It'll do its film festival run this year, and we are talking to various distribution outlets. Also through the website, please feel free to reach out to us for private screenings, or if you would like to host a screening, we can definitely arrange that. We also are hoping for it to get into, the educational, market, because we really, as Penny mentioned, we really want to share it with people, just to give a different perspective of Chinatown. As Penny mentioned, there is this somewhat fear of, objectification and othering. And really Chinatown, just like many neighborhoods across this country, it is a neighborhood. It's a community of people. People live there, people work there, people make their livelihoods there. And it really, I would say that for me, one thing that I really want to get out of this film, I want people to get out of this film is, is activism, and really, you have a voice. People have a voice, and we need to use it. It is using your voice is as American as apple pie. It's our First Amendment, to be cherished and to be exercised. So that's what I would also say about the film. But yeah, so anyway, so the plans for the film are, just to screen it at other film festivals, and then also to get it out in the marketplace via a distributor or through private screenings.
Cool. And I would be remiss if I didn't draw on the expertise of the two of you and ask you, what advice would you have for emerging filmmakers? And that doesn't necessarily mean young, because I'm working with a 70-year-old who's directing her first film right now. But what kind of advice would you have for young filmmakers? Penny, we'll start with you.
Don't quit your day job. It's tough. I'll be honest. You know, I hate to hear people quit their jobs and be full-time filmmakers. And because filmmaking and shooting and editing, you know, the whole process, it takes a long time. Meanwhile, you need some income to pay the bills. So that's my advice. Keep your day job, but keep going. Don't give up, because you'll get it finished.
Cool. Lisa, advice for emerging filmmakers?
Sure. My advice to filmmakers is just do it. So if you don't know how to edit, go online and learn how to edit. If you don't know how to operate a camera, borrow a camera, rent a camera for like a day or a weekend, just do it. I mean, I would say that for me, that is very much how I live. I mean, I needed stuff cut for my day job. No one was around. What was I doing at midnight? I was on YouTube watching a video of a 10-year-old teaching me how to use Final Cut Pro. Okay. So like, I did it. I mean, I had to out of necessity. And I would say for, rising filmmakers, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask people for help. People want to help you because there are so many stories that need to be told. And the more people that we can, empower, their voices, I mean, just, the richer our world becomes.
Yeah. And I'll put in there, and Penny and Lisa are a perfect example. There are communities of filmmakers, and Women in Film is one of them. We serve all genres, genders, and experience levels, but there are people to help you tell your stories too. And these stories are important. And the other thing, when Lisa spoke before about using your voice, I would encourage you to talk to your representatives about actually funding culture in this country. We're one of the few countries that really doesn't support artists and independent filmmakers in their work. And these are the stories we need to be hearing. I want to thank, again, Filmfest DC for giving us this chance to talk about this amazing film, and to thank you and encouraging you, if you haven't seen it already, please do. It's part of the DC for Real section within Filmfest DC. So there are some other short films made by local filmmakers and just some other films by and about DC filmmakers. But I want to thank, in addition to Filmfest DC, Penny and Lisa for giving me a chance to catch up with them today, and to thank them for this film. It is such an eye-opener in terms of the way you can look at these neighborhoods. And I also really appreciate, I think now, coming out now in this time period, it's so important to actually look behind the facades to what is actually happening in our cities. So don't forget, you can contact them through their website, 3chinatowns.com. Then we would love to hear from you. And again, thanks to Filmfest DC. Have a great film festival, everybody. And we'll see you soon. Bye, Penny. Bye, Lisa. Thank you.
Thanks.